Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 21 of The Dive. That's over 50 all-time of The Dive with 21.
We did it.
I'm Jat, joined by Kobe and Azael, and we have a lot to talk about this week. There's been a ton of discussion around NA Solo Queue, about the rapid change to the game. We also have a new patch. We also have to talk about the North American LCS. Azael, DeMar DeRozan's no longer Toronto Raptor, the only Canadian basketball team you cared about. We're going to talk about that after
Only
the
Canadian
show.
basketball team there is.
Yeah, and Kawhi Leonard. I mean, he's going to be there at least a year, we think.
It's tragic.
That'll be good. But Kobe,
What show am I on right now?
Inside the NBA with Josh and Isaac.
but Kobe, we're going to start with NA Solo Queue because there has been a ton of discussion about this topic.
Yeah, it's been everywhere, and it's really been all mixed up. And so I wanted to try and have a more clear discussion where we go issue by issue, because what I've seen a lot is, people just throwing stuff against the wall and flaming all together and kind of stepping from one argument to another argument and intertwining them as an explanation. So let's just start with one of the basic issues that we have in North America that affects our solo queue, and that is the population of League of Legends players that is spread out across one of the biggest geographical areas, right?
Sure.
The United States, we have from West Coast to East Coast, there's a huge distance, and so that brings up this issue of ping.
Right.
So let's start here. What are your guys, what would be the ways that you would go about attacking this issue? Because this issue is separate from a lot of the other things that people are layering on top of NA Solo Queue.
I mean, the ping one is a tough solve, I think, regardless, right? Like, you either, I think, get into the private server stuff, TR stuff, and play there. You do scrims. Like, those are options obviously immediately available to kind of circumvent having bad ping. The other bigger option that I've heard people throwing around is, okay, well, should LCS be where the servers are? Should the servers move to where the LCS is? But those are such huge undertakings. Like, to me, it's much more immediately doable to just be playing more on the tournament realm and focusing more on that.
And even that solution, which people have brought up, it doesn't actually solve the problem of people being spread out over this area, right? Even if we have all the pros on this tournament realm, that's still only going to have this low ping for people over here, right? One of the suggestions I heard was, we can have everybody masters and above will get access to this tournament realm. Okay, well, they would also all have to move to California, right? We have people that are populating our high-end solo queue that are East Coast players right now. And really the main solution would be higher population density of League of Legends players. So when the pros are complaining about the ping, that's why you have to come up with more creative, realistic solutions, because the technology doesn't exist right now for us to have, X person at his home in New York be able to play with North American pro over here in Los Angeles and with that level.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I think the stated problem here is that solo queue practice is 60 ping, and when you switch to Tourney Realm or LCS, which is 0 to 8 ping, it feels a lot different, and they want consistency across practice. The same way that if you want, a lot of people try and mimic the LCS stage setup in their practice rooms so that they have exactly the same feel for everything, and you can't necessarily get that. But what I think the pros have actually done, even though they're all complaining now about this private server, which causes, I think, even more issues, because then you're ruining your farm system and you're taking away your ability to find new strategies from actual one tricks. Sometimes there is that one trick who pros actually learn things from and then move that to the LCS. If you're shrinking that into a smaller environment where you're only scrimming against the same 50 people all the time and there are no new ideas, that's a problem. I think for the most part, doing an extra scrim block, which most LCS teams have moved to play more on lower ping with more practice, and then in your extra time then playing a couple hours a day on 60 ping, I think that's about what you should do as far as trying to get practice in this current environment of North America.
I like the first point that you brought up, especially of people explaining kind of the issue with going from 60 then to the tournament realm of 8 or whatever, or playing on live when you have to do competition.
Yeah, because I and I know Azael played WoW competitively. I played Guild Wars competitively, and that game had ping problems because they had global monthly tournaments where EU would play against NA online, and if you had a team of 8 EU players and a team of 8 NA players, it would randomly decide which server you played on. And that
Didn't like
ping
rotate
difference,
back and forth or anything.
it would just randomly do it.
No, dude.
And that game was very ping reliant. There were
Yeah.
3/4 second spells that you could interrupt for huge punishments or rewards. And if you were on your server, you could twitch it if you were good. If you were on the other server,
There's no way.
you couldn't.
Yeah.
So, and even that game is just kind of something you then dealt with. And if you're a really good team, you're able to win on both servers. But I think like if the teams were all at a high level, that would just like destroy the game. So believe me, I understand what ping problems are. But I also would say that the difference between 50 and 8 ping is much less than that. And there are a lot of things. There's a few champions that are harder to practice on 60 ping versus 0 ping, like a Rise or something that is very ping reliant. But for the most part, I think you can execute 99% of League of Legends on 60 ping versus 8.
What I would say, though, and to back up the argument of the people that are saying that they don't, the switch is the big issue, a lot of your practice is about building muscle memory and reactions into your gameplay. So because every millisecond does count in these games, as far as the execution of your strategy that you're trying to pull off, and the amount of time that you have to come up with these decisions. So if you want to, that's why Jet's talking about, they want their setup to be exactly like LCS, right? So everything's exactly the same, so you don't have to spend extra brain power, extra time, thinking of these things or reacting in a different way. So that one definitely does make a lot of sense.
Okay, so there's more stuff that you want to
Exactly,
talk about.
right? So the geography and the population thing, that's a super hard one to tackle because of the technology. But these suggestions have come up.
I mean, honestly, like if you have unlimited resources and you can rescope the LCS, you put the pro LCS where the servers are, which would be centrally located in the United States, and you would probably do it in Chicago, right? In an ideal world, but we're also in a situation where that doesn't exist. And I also think there is some precedent from other regions, like how all of the Asian pros play on the Korean server, like Chinese pros play on that server. Around 70 ping, and a lot of other regions will ping up so they can play on that server and still climb very high in solo queue. So while it is definitely a problem, it is not the thing that prevents you from being good.
One of the things that came out of it was there's some clips of Double Lift's reactions on Twitch, and he's like, I just want to be able to click one button after my scrims, queue up, get my preferred role, and be able to play against lots of other
with the best
players, right?
Instantly.
And we're like, well, that would be great, right? But that's not something that we can create here, right? Because like you're talking about Korea, China, and on the LMS, all centrally, kind of located around that same thing.
All right, what's the next
one thing did come up, though, of course, the suggestion was, well, we're going to have everybody, on this tournament realm, right? And we're just going to put everybody on there. And then Po Belter came out with a response. Double Lift also came out with a response, and they're like, oh, it took too long to organize people and get the matchmaking correct, get people with the roles that they want. People aren't going to all want to play at the same time. And that, comes back to kind of the limited player base that we have and the people that are at that level. Even a Masters player, if there's a whole bunch of Masters players on one team and all the other teams, all LCS players, like obviously that's going to be very skewed. But these are different arguments than the other argument people brought up, which was the quality of NA Solo Queue, kind of the attitude of the players and the culture that people have ascribed to North American Solo Queue of the one tricks or not try-harding, the for fun region kind of topic. What are your thoughts, Azael, on this this other take, which is kind of a philosophy and mentality take?
More like, so specifically on like the tournament realm scrims and some of the issues with that, like I feel like some of those could be like, so I understand the frustration of if it's taking 30 minutes to get every game going and these sorts of things. I think like, just reading some online, people were talking about like Discord bots even that can be created where it's just, you just literally like type in Q or whatever, and it puts you all in, and it pops out. Like maybe it's not perfect, and everyone doesn't have the perfect role, but that doesn't exist in solo queue either. At the very worst, like when you have 100 pros who are doing this, I'm sure that like someone's stream mods, or like you could hire someone, or like there would be solutions I think that could like expedite the process and make it a lot more quick. And then it just depends, like how specific are you going to be? If Doublelift is like, oh no, I don't want to play with X Academy or LCS player on my team because they're not good enough and we're going to lose. Well, I mean, at a certain point, you're being too specific, right? Because like these are all professional players. Like if you're taking the 100 plus whatever Academy / LCS guys, I think as long as people have their main roles, like that's about the best that you could do. But I do think you could expedite the process a lot by having some sort of admins like facilitating or some sort of thing like that. And I'm sure that there would be people willing to do this, whether it's for money or just for fun. I mean, look at some of the work people put in for community streams and stuff.
And I agree that you could do these things.
Yeah.
Like I think it's too hard to organize excuse is bad. Like I mostly agree with what Mark Z said, where it would be laziness. But what I disagree is that it isn't worth it. I think that if you're scrimming 3 blocks a day, solo queue is better with 60 ping than this theoretical 2 hours a day in-house environment. You're not going to get any big gains out of that you would not be gaining from solo queue. And you take these other aspects that Pobelter mentioned in one of his interviews with Travis, that you actually don't want to consistently lane against your LCS opponent who you're going to play the next week, and you do not want them to experience what it's like to play against your Anivia or your Vladimir or your Victor, because they're going to learn your tendencies and patterns, and you want to surprise them with that on the stage. So if you shrink the pool into this in-house solo queue environment, even if you solve all the constraints of being able to get on at the right time and have someone else managing your matchmaking and all that stuff, I think solo queue with 60 ping is actually still better for those few hours a day that you're playing it.
I think the only argument like that I have against that, and this is something that I've heard a lot of pros complain about, is like then autofill kind of like, makes games like
which
sometimes.
Which is going to happen in that environment too.
Just depending upon how long you're willing to wait for a queue, right? Because that's the only thing where it's like, how much are you learning if it's like Dardock versus, okay, like random like support player X got filled to jungle, or even like, Doublelift gets filled jungle and he's getting Dardock or whatever. How much are you learning in that game? So I can get that argument where maybe some pros are willing to wait longer and have for stricter matchmaking where it is like locked into roles only, and that's something you could achieve perhaps on a tournament realm. But other than that, no, I tend to agree. I mean, you're seeing new strategies, different ways that people are playing, you're experiencing different things, and a lot of times, I mean, one of the biggest criticisms for NA is that we don't adapt, we don't evolve very quickly, and this would
be even slower.
Exactly, that would limit it even more, because there are some guys who are playing different things, new things in solo queue, and sometimes are kind of the spark that starts people playing those new champions.
Kobe, what do you think about it?
They're pretty interesting arguments. I would say that it is important to recognize that while it's not a good excuse for, impossible, can't work, it is a reason that it's more difficult, right? So it's definitely more difficult. And, Peter talking about he wants it to be as easy as in Korea. Yep, too bad. It is not going to be that easy here. We have these problems that we have to deal with, and you have to come up with these solutions. So while these arguments are being made kind of against them and for other ways, it is important to recognize that these are issues and they are difficult, but that requires you, to make this effort, right?
Did you have more stuff that you feel like is being discussed and is being looped into it? Because I also
neither of you guys talked at all about the second thing, which was the criticism, especially all the European pros are talking about and North American pros, the attitude of players in solo queue.
Right.
So their issue is not just with the ping. The tournament realm was to solve ping, but it was also to isolate pro players to have their own games and not have these, jokey, run it down mid, dance or whatever. These guys are not taking solo queue seriously, and they're complaining about the motivation to make solo queue a competitive environment and that make it a good training ground. So that's why I was talking about them being like intertwined issues.
Okay. What do you think? How much merit would that one?
I think that also, deserves some merit. However, it's not perfect in if we're comparing it to other servers, it's not perfect in these other servers, right? People are always complaining about
EU West
European
is toxic.
toxicity.
Korea,
and stuff like
if the jungler takes the mid laner's blue buff for like years, it would AFK. If the game is,
and they had that surrender thing, like they would just
they open mid
immediately. Nobody wants to come back.
Yep.
But there are also things I think that can be done to improve these situations, right? None of these are impossible. None of them are also perfect. People have brought up a lot of different ideas around motivating people to climb and motivating people to be more competitive, different reward systems, different progression systems. How do you feel?
I mean, I just think it's tough because to me, I actually feel like with Scouting Grounds and Academy, Solo Queue has actually kind of become like a pretty viable path to pro. Like I actually feel like that's where people are recruiting Academy players out of, right? Like, and I've seen actually like a lot of pros duo queuing with guys who are really good, and then people talking about, oh, maybe they're going to be in Academy and these sorts of things, right? And it seems like that's there. You can't control like the people who are not interested in being pro but are just talented solo queue players. They're gonna do whatever the hell they want, right? And like, and you can't control those players really. Like as far as if you think like, oh, they're playing like if they're like inting or running it down, maybe Riot needs to be better about like banning those players who are actually legitimately trolling. But people who are playing something off meta or maybe giving up more easily, you can't really control that. And I think that happens in every region. And to me, like maybe Korean solo queue feels more serious, but I think that's again because of kind of what you talked about. It's like the centralized server in Korea where LCK pros are playing, LPL pros are playing, LMS pros are playing, and when you have all of those pros from all the different regions playing, those guys are going to take it a little bit more seriously because it's their jobs, it's their livelihoods.
Not only do they have a larger competitive player base, but I actually just thought of something. The more the pro players and academy teams scrim, the less time they have to actually find the appropriate rank in solo queue. So I think one of the things that's happening is the streamers and the one tricks that are solo queuing all day through the process of grinding are getting up into the top 50, top 100, so that when the other pro players are playing around rank 150 or rank 200, they're always matched in their games. And this is not a solution by any means, but if pro players didn't scrim, and they were all the best players, pro players in Academy would probably be like 100 of the top 120 in solo queue.
Yeah.
And suddenly your in-house server works because you have matchmaking is made for it, and also you filtered out the one tricks and streamers who aren't as good as the pro players. But by no means is that a solution.
We need a good quote here for Jack. The solution to improving North America.
Never scrim again.
No more scrims ever.
Yeah, but it's an exacerbating problem because the more you want to scrim to play with your team and play on the low ping, the less your solo queue rank accurately reflects your skill level, which therefore is going to make it feel like you were queued up with people that are not at your skill level because you haven't allowed the system to accurately rank you.
Yep, for sure. I mean, it's an interesting problem, right? Like there's the two things are working against each other. The more you scrim, the worse solo queue is. The more you solo queue, maybe you're getting
where's your team play?
Yeah, exactly. So it's these two conflating things, and you have to find what is right for your team. And you hear about different teams that do it different ways, right? Like Afrika is one of the teams that in LCK they talk about not solo queuing hardly at all, right? Like they're playing almost only scrims and a lot of internal practice. And some teams are saying, okay, well that's more valuable because even though we're maybe not seeing as many of these new strategies, they're not seeing ours as well. We're going to be all about pre-planning. We're going to have our timings perfect. We're going to have all these factors that we can control really, really, really down and focusing more on that. And it just depends what is more valuable to you and how do you really want to try to improve?
Yeah, and I think we're mainly done with this discussion, but I want to open it up a little bit more. This is a continuing conversation that always spikes whenever NA has some type of failure on an international stage, which happened at Rift Rivals. And I've compiled a list of reasons that North America isn't good, or how some would call it, NA excuses. We have high ping. We don't have as many players. Some would say there is a lazy culture. Solo queue is filled with one tricks and streamers. We play best of ones, not best of threes, and we don't have access to Korean teams. And I don't want this to come across as belittling or as making fun of it, because I think every single one of these things is a list of difficulties that NA teams have to work through.
Wait, you forgot one.
What's the other one?
Odawamne said LA's too nice.
Yeah,
and
good
it's like
food and
living
good
in a
weather.
vacation. So
And lots of
I'm
traffic.
actually
just
on
wanted to
vacation.
add that one in there.
Yeah,
Food's too good.
food's
yeah.
too good as well. It
And the
distracts you.
traffic's too bad to get home to do solo queue.
Okay.
Yeah, you make too much money. That's a problem. And like, I think there is some validity, but I also think if you go to someone who is incredibly familiar with some of the other cultures, they're going to have their own list that may not be as big.
Yeah.
Right? EU West, EU NE. Like, oh, we have 2 different servers. Our player base is fragmented. You have to switch servers as soon as you start getting
They
good.
even have a Nordic one. Too.
The organizations don't have as much money. Our living
bring in
situations
big
aren't as
stars.
good. We consistently get poached. Like, everyone has these things that hurt them. But I think I'd want to turn the discussion into, okay, how do you actually get good? Like, where would you try and get better? Because every region has their disadvantages and every region has their advantages. And I think it's a matter of how you diminish your disadvantages and make more of your advantages. Like, I think one thing that North America has that a lot of other regions don't is very well equipped organizations. So they have a lot of money. They have probably like the TL Alienware training facility. And I think CLG also just made a training facility, and a bunch of teams have offices, and they've switched players to having like single bedrooms instead of sharing rooms. All those things are leveraging the advantages that North American has to try and create a competitive advantage. And that's how literally any sport would work. Like, the reason that the US does well in the Olympics is because they scout kids from a very early age, find the best coaches, put them in training programs
salaries
for
so they
several
can do it
years,
full-time.
pay them so that they have these competitive advantages over countries that have larger populations. Otherwise, China and India would dominate at everything in the world because they have the most people.
Yeah.
But it's not that simple necessarily. So I'm wondering if you guys have anything that you think NA can do better if they want to try and improve.
I mean, this is a tough nut to crack, but I actually think that a lot of it is about coaching, improving the coaching. One of the things that I do think Korea has kind of over us is that they have a lot of experience of these team houses. It's more of like a newer thing, I think, in North America. And I'm not just talking about League of Legends. I'm talking back into StarCraft 2 and Brood War and and Warcraft 3 and like all these different games where team houses were much more of a thing. And I think like they have learned some lessons that perhaps we haven't. I think that like some of the coaching is done in a better way there. I think some of the difficulties that I see here is sometimes, it's like blurring the lines between like, what are you? Like, are you like a friend or like, just another one of the guys, or are you a coach? Like there needs to be sometimes a line between like, and people have to be able to be an authority figure as well as someone that you can chat to and everything. And that's something that I think takes a lot of time and experience, and maybe we don't have the right people in the right places just yet. And you can see that based on like, even the teams are agreeing based on the fact that they're constantly swapping people out, right? Like TSM, the most successful team in North American history. Well, Parth kind of gets the boot. He's not the coach anymore. Bring in a new head coach, big star. Okay, well, he's not the coach anymore. Now it's Lesboy. Is Lesboy just interim, or is he going to be out of there, right? Like, obviously there's not stability because the teams don't think they have the answers either. And to me, it's not about the fact that we don't have good enough players, because even if the North American only players aren't good enough, well, we have money and we can bring in big Korean stars. We can bring in big Chinese stars perhaps eventually, right? So that should be kind of solving some of those issues, and EU imports, etc. I just think that it comes down to coaching. It comes down to like how you're structuring this practice, because when you have all the advantages as far as practice facilities and people that you can bring in, I don't think that there are really too many good excuses unless you truly don't believe that you can field 3 good North American players. And if you truly cannot field even 3 good North American players on a team, then maybe it's just a player-based thing, and maybe that's like, well, you have to incentivize high school and college and way back to actually build up a better player base. Otherwise, I think that's not like a short-term solvable solution.
Right.
I think coaching is definitely an area for improvement. How are you going to go about improving the coaches?
I mean, again, I think it's like if you're looking at trying to do something long-term, it starts from the ground up. It starts at incentivizing, like, so we've incentivized collegiate play a little bit with the ULOL stuff. Solo Queue has been incentivized a little bit with Scouting Grounds. You have to incentivize, like high school teams and stuff to have coaches that then those coaches are getting picked up into the ULOL teams. The ULOL coaches are getting picked up into academy teams. Like if there's not a pipeline, like that's how it works in all traditional sports. And I feel like it's very hard to actually practice being a coach, right? Because right now it's
I think that's the issue, right?
Yeah.
Because like defining what good coaching is
You have
for
to
League of
practice
Legends, right? Exactly. Like there is like some structure as far as other sports and how they want to do coaching that can be applied. But then there are so many specific things to League of Legends I think that has been a difficulty.
Right now, I think it's like, I make a team. I'm like, all right, Jet and Kobe, you guys both know a ton about League of Legends. Who wants to be my coach? And maybe Jet's like, nope, don't want to coach. Or maybe he does, right? And maybe you don't, right? So
I'll be your coach for this argument.
So Coach, we got Coach Kobe coming in, right? And you know a lot about the game. You've studied the game. You've analyzed the game, but you have not coached, right? And it is a different skill set. And it's also like...
I did. I coached.
All right. Well, you're an expert.
Basketball.
There you go. So that's
basically the same thing.
That's the problem. That's the problem. We don't have Kobe coaching. Otherwise, we would have won Worlds by now. But it's one of those things where you would never see like someone who had well, maybe it's not totally true, but like in most traditional sports, people have some sort of coaching experience. There's a lot of like kind of like a pipeline that people work their way up and have like, even if it's just like as a player, they were more of a coach and kind of learning those skills. I don't feel that our pros are having as much of an opportunity to learn those skills, and maybe our sport is not old enough to have people who really have truly learned both the skills and the coaching skills.
Yeah, and also the system doesn't put in coaching until you are a pro.
Yeah.
Like, even just resistance to coaches. And I know we've had the coaching discussion before, so we're probably getting off topic and we should move on soon. But like, you think about playing basketball, like, my 5th grade basketball team had a coach.
Yep.
I was 10 years old, and I was used to having this authority figure teach me the fundamentals and the mechanics and tell me when I did something good and tell me when I did something bad. Where we have these league pros who for 3 or 4 years, they are their own coach, and they learn to trust their own instincts, and because they were good enough, they climbed to the top. They never had someone guiding them along the way. So as soon as after 4 years of grinding and perfecting this craft, you have some Yahoo come in and tell you to do it differently, you're going to be resistant. Right? And that's another thing that I actually don't know the solution of, because it would happen.
League of Legends summer camps.
Yeah. Silver coaches and
run
right?
by all the organizations. They teach you the fundamentals. The best ones get picked up to be streamers.
True.
To be
but
streamers.
The summer camp is going to be... Double Lift's going to run his summer camp, and he's going to tell all the kids how to play AD carry. Whoops! Now mages are in the
This was going to be my answer to your question of like ideas for improvement. In addition to the coaches, I think that since a lot of people have brought up this idea of motivating through solo queue and getting people to be more competitive there, and everyone's been looking at Riot. Which I think that there could definitely do some more things along those lines. Also, if the teams wanted to take something like that into their own hands, as far as if you take like an example of TSM, and I was kind of joking there with you get picked up, you get to become a streamer, that is a big motivation, right? Lots of people want to be streamers. TSM is a huge brand. If you get picked up to be like a TSM streamer, that in itself is like a very big goal and big reward, right? So if they are going through solo queue or something like that, let's say theoretically my team, maybe it's not TSM anymore, but it has equally or decent streaming rewards, right? Yeah. What if I have scouts in North American solo queue, whatever, and people are aware of this, right? And you run into one of those or something, and then it super motivates them, right? And they want to impress these people. They know that people are watching. It's like they're watching summer tryouts or something like that. And then people get really motivated to try and solo queue, and they do. If you get picked up to be a streamer, like that in itself is a monetary reward as well. So then you can dedicate more time to it and specialize more, and then maybe get some time on an academy team, start to get the 5-on-5 experience or something in there. All of these things though are require resources.
Yep.
So then it's also about balancing the business end, because the teams, the brands, they want people to be building their brands at all times, right? So that's something, picking them up as streamers, I think that kind of helps the teams and brands as well.
They just become for fun streamers though, Kobe.
Well, that's the possibility. People also really like winners though, right?
Yeah.
So one of the best streamers, or one of the most prolific streamers of all time from the heyday, was Best Riven NA. He had one of the biggest streams. This was way back, like season 2 or something. He didn't have a camera. He didn't even talk on his mic. He literally, it was Riven gameplay to, electronic dance music or something like that, right? And he got this huge following because, his attitude of name himself best Riven NA, he actually was the best, and he would just pull off, these really good plays. But he actually was not a, forefront streamer or whatever. He would troll around a little bit, like buy mana pots on Riven and stuff. But
Yeah.
it is possible without
Can be done.
losing full focus.
It can be done.
You don't have to be, oh, look at this crazy play I made with full AP. Like,
10,000
streamer-
AP one
Hold
shot.
on, which streamer were you impersonating there, Kobe? No, don't answer that question.
Everyone has a streamer in their mind.
Everyone
check
has
out my
someone-
new build. It's a gunblade on Nasus.
Woo!
That actually could work.
50% lifesteal. I want to change gears a little bit to congratulate Huhi on getting his green card.
Woo!
So that's
Wait,
a
we
long
didn't plan a
process
celebration.
that he's working on, but it's a really big deal because
Yeah.
that not only means that
talent.
he has his green card, it also means that he no longer counts as an import slot. And in this long discussion of we're talking about like how does NA improve over time, like this is a very small part of that, right? Because not only does Huhi now no longer count as an import, if any of the current imports are able to go through the green card process and get it, that will also count. Or we had Commissioner Chris Greeley, the NA LCS commissioner, on our show earlier last week, like NA LCS Countdown, and he was mentioning there's a few more players that this will be happening to soon. So Jensen, for instance, no longer counts as an import in 2019 summer, but players like Impact and Phoenix will actually not count as an import as early as 2019 spring. So do you have any thoughts about how this changes the value of it, or what do you think about the green card?
I think it's super cool. If you move to a new country and you dedicate, like you establish your life here, right? We talk about a lot of these guys have been putting down roots.
Yeah.
When is the turning point, right? It seems like you should be able to be justified as, being an NA, resident and NA player now. So I'm, super happy for him because, he's been so committed. He's got the longtime girlfriend. They made a joke about getting married or whatever. She's like, whoa, we're not married yet. They have a dog. That's about as far as it's gone.
It's fur baby.
That's close.
Yeah, exactly. Azale,
You're all locked up.
Azale's pretty in the same boat. You're basically married too,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. But yeah, it's awesome for him. It's a super long process, so that's got to feel really good as far as impact on NA as these guys, do become more like resident players. I think it matters a lot if you're talking about tip-top talent. I think, like when I look at a guy like Phoenix is obviously really good, but Phoenix to me has not been like a highly sought after, okay, he's the absolute best, we need this guy type of player, and neither has Huhi, really. So does this like massively improve the region? Probably not, unless CLG is going to now, drop someone and import and really like pick up a big star somewhere else. And that really hasn't been what CLG has been kind of known for. For C9, Jensen always had been talked about in that light really, really heavily. Obviously, C9 is struggling this year, but I could see the Jensen one being a bigger deal when NA is known as a region that doesn't have strong mid laners. If someone can pick up Jensen, if Echo Fox then gets Jensen or something like that, and now that's like opening up another import slot, and then you can play Lost, and if that's an upgrade or whatever, right?
Yeah, like imagine you had a European mid laner, and then you could also import like the best bot lane in Europe and have them on the same team. Like what would
Just
that
imagine. Were you saying you could get someone along lines of the best in the West?
Yeah, I think so. You'd be unstoppable, right?
It would be, yeah. But I mean, it is an advantage, right? Just because you have an advantage doesn't mean you can't throw it away, though, Chad. You have to remember that.
All right, let's move on to patch 8.14 on that note. This won't be hitting LCS until a week from now with the patch notes released last night. There's a few noteworthy changes in patch 8.14, a bunch of small champion changes that we will touch on, the ones we care most about, but also some larger changes like the 1-minute cooldown increase on teleport, making that a 6-minute cooldown, or still a 240-second cooldown if it's canceled. And then, maybe more notably, some nerfs to gold funneling. So let's start there.
With the gold funneling?
Yeah. What do you think of the nerf to gold funneling? It is essentially is what we talked about last week.
Yeah,
If you have the most gold in the game and you do not have a fully upgraded jungle item, which would count as the Cinderhulk or Warrior or Blood Razor variant, you actually get 10 less gold from lane minions.
Yeah, I would say exactly what I said last week. I still have the exact same opinion. I think and they admitted that this is a, quote unquote, like ugly change, heavy-handed. They used a lot of these terms for it. I agree, because I'm very much of the opinion that you should be solving the root cause of the problem. This is a Band-Aid on top of the symptoms rather than the root cause of the problem. So, if you're gonna go and just cap the gold like this for anyone who happens to have the smite/jungle item on your team, then there could be repercussions for a super fed jungler. I got a quadra kill super early on.
Do we think this will actually stop teams from running smite mid?
I think it's gonna stop. Maybe not like the self funnel stuff, because you don't necessarily get like super
Just
far
random
ahead.
smite mid or like a Karthus smite bot.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to stop a fair bit of that, because I mean, if you're having a really good game, it is going to limit it, unless you want to do more creative stuff and be really practiced with it. Like we talked about, okay, maybe you're doing it, but you're doing more gold sharing, right? Like that sort of thing. If you get ahead, then you give more of the gold to your marksman or whatever, right?
Yep.
But I think that for most of the teams, they will not put in the effort or time to really, really like have it so practiced out that it's still worthwhile. We've even seen with just like standard funnel, it's been around for a while now. There's actually not very many teams that are super good at it, even still, right? So this would just be even more complex. So I think maybe some of the teams that are the very best at it would still find ways to do it and still find situations where they want to do it. But otherwise, I think we're not going to see it.
Yeah, I think so. If either of you guys want to duo queue with me and practice this new funneling strategy, it's not necessarily funneling, but it would be you take 2 smites, you're essentially a duo lane mid, and then you both jungle. So it's very much just a farm sharing efficiency play.
Oh, I've done this, except it was against my will in solo queue, and it's called trolling, Jack. That's trolling.
But if both people agree, it's not trolling. And that to me is like the way it works, because you get the bonus experience with the jungle item on the first jungle camp, so you can both get level 2. You get extra experience if 2 people are in lane instead of just 1, so you're more efficiently getting resources off the map. But it kind of defeats the purpose of current gold funneling, where you are trying to take advantage of the exponential scaling of League of Legends items and get to a snowballed point where no one can touch you. That, I think, is slowed down enough to no longer be seen.
And what you're saying is basically just smite mids anyway, which is people are already doing, right? So they farm raptors or whatever.
We still might see smite mids.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think we'll see that. Not a lot of changes from last week.
Kobe, there's
I am super excited about a lot of the changes in this patch. I saw a lot of people that were like, "Oh yeah, this patch, these changes don't mean much or whatever." Personally, though, specifically, just my first pass of a patch is always only scrolling down looking for jungle stuff. I'm like, all right, when am I gonna start playing in solo queue? And what do I need to drop here or whatever? And the first things that jumped out, obviously I go over the laning stuff later, but the first things that jumped out is gonna be Rek'Sai and Pantheon, baby.
Not Vi. Vi's your favorite champion.
She's garbage.
Okay.
I stopped playing Vi a long time ago. She still is my favorite champion. I don't understand why they refuse to give her some of her move speed back. The things that pissed me off the most were when they took away 5 move speed at a time, and they just kept taking away move speed.
Have you tried phase rush Vi?
To make her? That's terrible idea.
She's got those heavy ass gloves.
So you need the move speed when you're running around the jungle. All junglers need move speed.
Yeah.
Because jungle is a time-gated role where the faster you are, the more money you can make. The more wards you can put down, the more plays you can make. Every second as a jungler counts. That's why all these laners, they're lazy. They just sit in their lane, playing footsie with each other. Junglers are the hard workers.
How's that top lane swap going, by the way, Kobe?
I played 2 games in top lane.
Yeah, you gave up.
I did not give up. I am actually going to stream it.
Ooh, it's exciting.
Yeah, I'm going to do a top lane swap, and get some people to coach me. But that is beside the point, Azael. We were going on a jungle rant here.
Yeah.
The move speed for Vi, actually, fine, Jet. We'll talk about the Vi buffs because you
I brought it up twice and I've derailed you. We'll get.
That's okay.
We will get
The
to
buff-
teleport and the other junglers later.
These are powerful buffs for Vi, okay? 20 seconds off of the ultimate cooldown
rank 1.
early on, as well as increasing her base attack speed, which means if you have any other attack speed stuff, then it's going to further increase that. And she does have that built into her kit as well. So these are very powerful Vi buffs. But again, the feels bad one for me is the move speed. So you can do things to try and combat that, like rush, swifty boots, and stuff like that.
Right.
And those are actually pretty good on her because you reduce the slow that you put on yourself when you're charging Q. So I do like doing that. And maybe this will be enough power where I play her anyway. But it's not as exciting to me as getting some move speed back. Super low cooldown on the ult though, so maybe she will end up being good. First two that I'm gonna play though, Rek'Sai and Pantheon, because these are very big buffs to champions that I thought were already playable. And when playable champions get buffs like this, I feel like they have a very real chance of being used a lot in the LCS too. I know that Rek'Sai, has always been super popular, but as a Cinder Hulk semi-tank, these buffs are all for attack damage Rek'Sai. And if you get Rek'Sai, the type of champion where you can go knock up into the 3 attacks, true damage, ultimate as your combo, that only leaves a small amount of space for the opponent to react. And that is a very good combo that can be used in pro play, especially with more people having DPS junglers. And we've had a lot more squishy junglers. You don't always have to have that tank. So I think that Rek'Sai, with the AD buffs here, could come in and might be the most popular. But the Pantheon buffs are huge. 8% free attack speed They target it at jungle because, that's not that great for lane phase, but that's huge for jungle.
Yeah.
And then you get a free 10 extra damage on your W whenever you're all-inning someone, which you basically get to use once against them, so you 10 more damage. But it helps out his jungle clear a lot. So
The ones that I was really kind of drawn to is I already thought Cade and Jinx had been getting a fair number of buffs and maybe should be seeing some more play. 50 more HP at level 1 is a ton, right? That's I think the amount on a Doran's ring,
Twitch
whatever.
too.
Twitch as well, right? So that's a lot of HP. And if you get to the point where these bruisers or whatever cannot all in you, or mages and so on and so forth cannot all in you, then you are going to outscale them, and you're going to be very, very useful later on. So maybe we're seeing more of that. And the Corki one also seemed really big. It's 40 base damage on your E level 1. Immediately when I saw that, I think
it reduces more of your hits at level 1.
The Corki ones just seem insane to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just immediately thinking, all right, well, Corki's back mid lane for sure. Because there's a lot of matchups where you just are then going to press E and you're going to right click on the person at level 1 and I guess I can't.
Yeah,
trade.
I don't think anyone can actuade trade with that now.
Yeah. I agree.
110 damage and shreds you.
Yeah.
Let's not get carried away. Aatrox also got buffed, by the way.
No.
Well, he got adjusted.
Yes, adjusted for a net gain, in my opinion. This is my take on it.
I was thinking that it's possible he was buffed.
So let me explain why I think this is net positive for Aatrox. Okay, yes, they did take down a little bit of the early power and a little bit of
the base damage of his Q is reduced by 10 at all ranks, and the Umbral Dash's E has a 4-second slower cooldown at rank 1, but 4 seconds faster at rank 5, and that's the second spell that you
exactly. You are already maxing this second, so it's not going to be a huge difference. Plus, I already on Aatrox was rushing for cooldown reduction, Black Cleaver, taking Transcendence for a free 10%, and then you have your item of choice. Death Dance is pretty popular, but any sort of 10%, Caulfield's Warhammer. Once you get that much cooldown reduction, that's where I really feel like the champion shines, because it doesn't actually even take that many games before you can hit the majority of your Qs if you have that cooldown reduction for your Umbo dashes. And they didn't actually hit his spell vamp at all. Or the physical vamp, whatever you want to call it.
And he has better scaling on his ult
off
now.
of his E, because it's insane. Plus, not only did they buff the physical damage on his ult, but also, as Jat said, 4 seconds lower cooldown on the E at max rank.
Yeah.
So you're going to
which with a lot of CDR is going to drop to around like 5 seconds. And the E is the main way you actually land your Qs because you can E during the animation to move the hitbox. And
well, that's the whole point of the champion.
yeah, and that's 4 seconds less cooldown.
And the only like significant thing here was like the 30 HP base to me. Well, no, the other ones are significant, but like that one's definitely going to hurt the early lane phase a little bit. I still feel like he is going to be extremely powerful in all matchups because the only kind of semi answers were like Fiora, Huhi and Phoenix thought Renekton.
Yeah, my main counter to him is probably the ban.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was gonna say. It's funny because talking to some pros, like a lot of the pros I've asked about Aatrox, like, yep, he wins every single matchup. There's no matchups that he doesn't win, and it's like people, some people have been telling me like, oh, like I've been hearing Quinn could be pretty good and whatnot, but then like actually saw that matchup played out a couple times, and the Aatrox went Comet, and like the Q is so long that when the Quinn is autoing you, you can actually knock him out, and you can also knock him up during his jump and everything. So, I mean, definitely there are matchups that can punish it, but they feel kind of like pretty risky sometimes.
Yeah, it feels like the only answer is, oh, I need my jungler to camp for me, right?
Yeah.
And whenever I have a situation where there's a matchup where the only answer is either hard CC him from 100% to 0 or like have your jungler camp him, or like that is not a real solvable situation, right?
Right.
So,
I had a small one
strong.
that
Really
I
strong.
that I wanted to talk about, and after this, unless you have one, Azil, I want to get to TP.
Oh, you?
I like the Cassiopeia buff, actually. The adding 20 extra damage to the Q at max rank. I don't think this is going to have like a meaningful change on Cassiopeia's win rate or anything, and there's also a 0.1 increase to the ability power. But I want to try Q max first Cassio, because way back when Cassio was actually released, that's how I played the champion, and I was one of the first people to actually play Cassio in like high elo solo queue back then, and it's because you get so much move speed off the Q. It's a 3-second cooldown, 275 damage poke spell, and since almost everyone goes Emax, even though that has when they're poisoned 20 damage scaling per level, the main scaling on that ability is actually from Cassiopeia's level, not because of Cassiopeia's skill order. So there's a chance that now Q Blast becomes better, and I personally like that version of Cassiopeia more. It's like more poke based. You choose when you all in rather than just having to like charge forward at them all the time. So I'm gonna be trying that, and I'll report back on how quickly I give up.
Cool.
Sounds good. He's like, by the way, anyone want to funnel me for this?
Yeah. By the way, if we both take Smite and share experience, I think it can work.
All right, NA LCS.
Wait. There was
Teleport.
actually another big one.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
teleport's
yeah,
a huge
yeah.
change.
Teleport,
A minute.
You were right
Dale,
there, Chad.
You're the resident top laner.
We are not getting away without
actually-
talking about this. Extra minute, baby.
I've talked about this actually a lot with some different people. So first off, I totally understand why teleport should be nerfed. It's one of those things where now I'm seeing a lot of games, even just like Diamond Solo Queue level games, normal games, everything where there's like 3 to 4 TPs per team, and that is like pretty ridiculous, right? And it starts to feel like, oh well, the lane phase isn't validated. Everyone like doesn't matter if you kill them, blah blah blah. Which I totally get, and I think this will help to solve that somewhat. It's going to help to, I think for sure, at least, bot lane and whatnot, like we'll be seeing a lot less TP. I think we'll be seeing much more combat summoners because there's much bigger windows now to punish. My frustration with this is because I've been playing top more recently because of, playing in Rumble and whatnot, and then playing top in that, like, my solution is just gonna be playing another role as soon as Rumble's over. But when I'm playing top lane, I feel like my only way to really like interact with the rest of the team a lot of time is through teleport plays, and like that feels like my only opportunity to like, oh, my bot lane's losing. Well, the only chance I have to do anything about that feels like a really good TP play, right? And it feels like I'm so isolated in so many games that even if I slam my lane, if other areas of the map are going poorly, I don't feel like I have much opportunity to interact with that. And then it used to be the ability to, it's like, okay, we'll just play Shen. But Shen now has gotten strong at support, so it's getting more nerfs because it being good at support. And I already don't think Shen is as strong in top lane, so it doesn't feel like I can use Shen as an answer to like play around the map like I want to do. Tom Kench has been garbage top lane for a really long time, so I'm just feeling more and more like top lane is just more and more isolated, which just feels bad when I'm playing that role. Like,
Well,
so it's kind
as
of a
far
bummer.
as far as shifting who takes teleport, I read a comment on Reddit I think that I actually kind of agree with. It's like, what will happen now that teleport has a 1-minute cooldown? And it said in like middle elos like silver, everyone will take ignite. In high elo, 80% of people will take teleport. In pro, everyone will still take teleport, right? Because
in top lane or everywhere?
in top lane,
Yeah.
80 carry, I
agree
think,
with that.
will change. I think what is clear is that teleport is too strong.
If used really well.
And then the debate becomes for what reasons, right? Because teleport has the ability to shut down plays on other part of the map or create plays on other parts of the map. Like anytime a jungler ganks, if you threaten with the teleport and then cancel it, oftentimes that stops the gank and the threat is gone and the jungler's lost his time. But it's also very powerful for the other reason of you die in lane, you need to get back to lane for lane pressure. So I think it needed to be nerfed. I'm not sure if this is the nerf to do it. We'll see what happens with 6-minute cooldowns. What I'd be interested in seeing is what if, to diminish the power of teleport, you made it so it didn't get you to lane with as big of a delta. So one of the most boring parts of League of Legends is when you're dying or when you're basing, the like 35 seconds it takes to run back to your lane. And we give you home guard boots at 20 minutes. What if you gave like baby home guard boots on normal recalls so that the difference between a teleport back and just running back is smaller?
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see what that does. But Kobe, do you have any thoughts?
That's interesting. So what time would you get this baby home guard boots?
All the
would
time.
it scale
I
up
think
to
you
the
get
20
it.
minutes full time?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know. Maybe at 20 minutes it just breaks. Like, I literally thought of this while Azale was talking. So I have
cool.
not tested it and I've not talked to anyone about it. But I decided to throw it out there.
I think it's definitely interesting. I mean, I think you'd want to see more like Moby Boots stuff. People just like using the baby home guard to roam to a different lane, then
Yeah.
TV back to their lane,
And maybe
stuff.
it's super
but,
toxic. Like that's why we removed home guards in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong.
But it
it
is-
wouldn't be as strong as home guards. It
Again,
would be weak.
part of the cost of dying is the time that you're not allowed to spend back there, right?
Yeah.
And that's why they early game lowered death timers and everything, is because that's like one of the things that they do adjust. So
I mean, it's one of
Yeah.
those things
That's-
where
that's-
it feels frustrating when you play top lane with Ignite, and as I have, and then you kill the person, but the lane's in a bad spot, and they TP back, and you actually end up behind. Like, as funny as it sounds, because sometimes the experience is actually bigger than the kill.
Yep.
So it's like I kill them, I get back, but they hit 6 first, and then I die, and I don't have TP to come back, so I lose the full wave. Now I'm actually just way behind, right? And that's, I think, a lot of people's frustration with TP is that it's just like, oh, well, it invalidated these things. But you know, the other side of the coin is then if it's 2 combat summoners, it feels like top lane is very much decided by whose jungler came first, because no one can come back to lane and have that kind of, you know, little barrier.
It makes the kill threat so much higher.
It's a tough problem to solve, but I think TP should be nerfed because it's just being too rampant. But it's always a bad feeling, I think, for any role when you feel like something that maybe doesn't need to be a hit as much for your role is being hit because of how it is elsewhere. When something gets moved to support and that's being nerfed, or when, you know, carry junglers you're popping off, well, now you get less gold from lane minions because funnel is a thing, and these sorts of things, like the kind of I don't know what you want to call it, but like the side spray essentially that's like you know, it's targeted at this, but it's also hitting those. That always feels kind of bad, and that feels a little bit like this for top lane for me.
Yeah, I can agree.
yeah, and then you have to get really careful though, because if people call for only allow junglers to take smite and only allow top
course.
laners to take teleport,
Which is why I think it's fine.
then you
Yeah.
start to lose out on some of that diversity.
But I'll just stop playing top.
We got a complicated game, dude. We got teleport,
back
nerf
to the
splash
jungle
into top
soon.
lane. We got gold funnel nerf splash into jungle that could easily splash a support if they do something else. I mean, it already did. Remember when you wanted to stop junglers from taking sightstone? So we made sightstone this weird like support quest completion
Yeah.
mechanic. There's complicated game, Kobe.
Yep.
definitely true.
Talk about North American LCS now. It is very complicated currently because we have a 4-way tie for first and a 4-way tie for second, meaning 8 of the 10 teams are within 1 game of each other. I also pulled another stat, and this is my excuse or reason for why my predictions have sucked on Countdown. There have been, listen to this. Crap. All right.
We can stall and talk about how
There have been
your
20
predictions in the past have also been.
I got it. There's been 40 matchups in the 4 weeks of NA LCS. 22 of them have had a higher seeded team versus a lower seeded team. So historically, those are the favorites versus your underdogs. And if you're playing like normal predictions, well, you usually pick the favorites, right? Unless you're calling an upset. Of those 22 games, the low seed has won 14 times and the higher seed has won 8. So upsets are happening 64% of the time in the first 4 weeks.
That's because these are best of ones, and the game, like watching some of the games, the teams have been winning off of single plays some of the times, right? There's Bandstill in one.
Agreed.
Oh, there's one where they try and rush the Nexus or whatever at the wrong time, and they get run back all the way to the other side. So
Real quick, as
He is the
comparison,
previous stat. Go.
EU, I did EU as well to see. It's like, it's just best of ones. It's the crazy meta. EU has 27 games with high seed versus low seed, and the high seed has won 20. So 74% of the time. Much more like you would expect from favorites versus underdogs.
These goddamn EU analysts are just on easy street.
It's true.
There's no skill
It's
over
too
there.
easy.
Division and Venias, they just don't close their eyes. Yeah, I'll take the higher seed, no problem.
That's all they do.
Get 70%.
Boom. Okay, that's it. Now you can continue.
that was
That's the
actually
takeaway.
I like
takeaway.
I like the payoff for this one.
Yeah.
That was good.
That actually wasn't what I was going for.
But
It's exactly what he's going for.
Isaiah's got your back.
Yeah, we're on the same
however,
wavelength.
it does highlight this thing where the teams in North America, we don't have any consistent winner, right? We don't have any consistent dominating team. There is no surefire, like the TSM when Double Lift was on it, right? They smash every game in 20 minutes. You can count on them to win. We don't have that from any of these teams.
And we don't even really have any of the like stinker teams either. Like a lot of the teams that had been towards
Optic is close. They're the closest
close.
we got.
But like, sometimes you don't have a TSM, but you have like a coast, right? And you're like, I know
can count on
my
you.
boys are good for a loss, right? Like that's gonna be one for the day. But I mean, Golden Guardians and FlyQuest, who are two of the
Guardians is 4-4.
yeah, they both are, right? Those were two of the worst teams in the league, and they're beating teams that traditionally have been top teams, right? So they have obviously improved, or or the other teams have got worse, or it's a combination, or whatever. But yeah, there's like the predictions. I don't envy you making predictions on a lot of these days, because I mean we were even joking with Freak when he was hosting the desk, and he did predictions one day. The next day he was like, oh yeah, kind of making fun of you because you got them all wrong or whatever, or 1-4. But he's like, yeah, I would have gone 0 for 5 today if I predicted right. And it's like, okay, well, it's actually pretty hard.
So, of the ties, since we've had so much volatility, we have in our doc here, like there's a 4-way tie for first between, I should pull up the standings, between all the teams that are 5 and 3, and then there's a 4-way tie for second. So it's essentially the whole league.
CLG, Echo Fox, Team Liquid, 100 Thieves are all tied for first right now. And CLG is number 1 because of the alphabet.
Boom. They
100
always
Thieves
have that
actually
going for
is
them.
number 1 because
That's not what LoL
Our
Esports.
standings
That's
has
not
it
what
there.
LoL
Oh.
Esports
We got some
says.
CLG fans in the engineering
Google.
team.
I'm looking at Google.
Yeah,
right
you're
now.
looking at Google. LoL Esports doesn't put numbers.
They don't
above-
believe in numbers.
LoL Esports doesn't count numbers, I guess.
It's odd how the tiebreaker system works. There's no tiebreakering.
pretty
They're
funny.
tied. Anyway, so normally what we do is like who looks the best of the
yes,
5 and 3 teams and who looks the best of the 4 and 4 teams. But I kind of want to open it up and just say like there's 8 teams within 1 game of first.
Oh.
Now,
It's a funny way to put it.
Yeah.
who
it's
is the best?
It's like, why are we drawing this line separating the ones that are tied for first and the ones that are tied for second when there's
One game.
one game difference?
Yeah.
Right?
So we have 8
my
teams
God.
there.
8 teams are basically tied.
Who is the can you pick one that you think is actually the best of the 8?
See,
I still
almost everybody
Still-
would have picked Team Liquid. Is that what you're about to say? Would you still pick Team Liquid even after these losses?
Yeah, I still think I would pick Liquid. Them or CLG has actually looked pretty decent. CLG's been looking a lot stronger. For me, it'd probably be between those two teams. But that's again not to say like, wow, these teams are flawless. everyone has some stuff going on here. Echo Fox, had a pretty messy game. 100 Thieves are doing their roster swap stuff. Echo Fox doing roster swap stuff. TSM is a mess. I mean, Clutch has had some really bad games. Golden Guardians and FlyQuest are willing to say they're one of the best teams. Like, it's kind of messy out there. I'm still probably on Liquid or maybe CLG, because CLG has been having some strong weeks.
So, which camp are you guys in as far as the mistakes that have been popping up, right? Are teams getting better at forcing mistakes from the other teams and drawing everyone closer together? Are the top teams just making more mistakes? Are unforced errors more common?
So here's one of the great tragedies of the North American LCS Code. Is
American tragedy.
North American tragedy.
Okay.
You take another sports league and say 80% of the league is within one game of themselves. Like, anybody could win. It's suddenly like the most entertaining thing possible, which I'm actually quite entertained with.
The
this
opposite
split
of the NBA.
However, if you then said, and then the top 3 from that little super fun league will go to this other super league of all the good teams and suddenly have to compete. We have this like giant cloud in the distance of Worlds, and how we're hoping that these teams can somehow compete at Worlds, that I think is detracting from the race to first in the North American LCS, because in isolation that race is really cool, but there's that dark cloud of Worlds. So to your question, Kobe,
I like how from the North American perspective, Worlds is a dark cloud. Everyone else is like, yes, the shining chalice that we're all striving
I don't know about everyone else. Maybe for LCK.
But NA is like, oh God, the Worlds is coming again.
Because my read on it is that right now, most teams are making more mistakes rather than outplaying.
Yeah.
And I think you hear that from a lot of the pro player interviews, even going back to the discussion we had at the start of the day, how they're all spending more time scrimming and theory crafting than they ever had before, because there has been so many changes to the meta. On top of that, it's now about 6 months into our academy system, and teams are still navigating how to best utilize substitutes. Cloud9's been the team that's struggling the most with this, when they thought they had some magic in their academy roster, but really now they're kind of back to their main roster and they're kind of in last place. So none of those things inspire a large amount of confidence currently.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in the same camp that it's mistakes more than like teams punishing this. Like, a lot of the stuff just feels unforced. I mean, using Team Liquid because I was talking about them. Maybe they're still one of the best. Obviously, their FlyQuest game was like pretty egregious when you're looking at like some of the situations in which they're dying, right? Like, it's not like, oh my God, this was so beautifully orchestrated by FlyQuest. It's like, Ole just wandered up in the lane and died again. Okay. Smithy blast cones impact away and then doesn't ult him, and then they both die.
If he ults himself at 80% HP, then
yeah, those are not like, wow, how did FlyQuest just painted them into a box? Nothing they could have done there. Perfect play from both sides. But I got to tip my hat to Flame there. He really made Smithy shoot that blast cone and then miss his ult, right? It's hard to like argue that it's forced. You could say maybe FlyQuest did a better job at like collapsing and forcing that or something, and I think that there are maybe some things there, but it's mistakes.
Yeah.
A lot of these games.
Wild Turtle and JJ collapsed on Ole's ass too quickly. And he was like, oh, they're on me.
They're here again. What
As soon
are they
as he
doing?
made that perfect play of headbutting in, I mean, FlyQuest was waiting for it and they pounced.
Yeah, it was some of those deaths were yikes. But it's definitely, there's been some messy games, but TL has also had some clean games, and it's also still fairly early in the season.
Is it?
We're
halfway through summer. You know what?
No,
I
but I mean, when you
remember
look-
past seasons, and we'd be like, all right, none of the teams, even at the beginning of summer, we'd be like, all right, they're not going to make any more changes now because we're all ramping up for Worlds and they have to focus on their team play and their communication.
I just mean Worlds is still far off, is basically what I'm saying, right? Like teams, like, so, as far as the dark cloud, there's still hope for like a ray of sunshine to be coming through, right? Like we're going into week 5, and when you look at there's 4 more weeks of regular season, then there's the playoffs, then there's like finals and so on, and there's regional gauntlet and all of these things. And if someone starts to like really pick it up now, if one of these teams do start really performing and make a good run through playoffs, trust me, we're going to be seeing that sunshine. We're going to be getting excited, just as we were for TL. And whether it pans out is a different story.
Don't worry, Zale. I see the sunshine every year.
Yeah.
No matter
I'm seeing that sunshine.
how dark the cloud is.
We always get rained on.
But I did want to. This kind of brings up an interesting thing, especially with this academy system. They're talking about the new system and teams really wanting the best, possible configuration. They have been making more changes, for better or worse, right? Maybe in the short term, having these academy rosters at their disposal has actually hindered some of the team building and the synergy and the consistency that would come out of teams not changing their rosters for all of summer, right? Not making trades and stuff like that. Now they don't have to make trades to do it. They just can bring people up and down. And I have heard from a lot of the players, especially since, Cloud9 are changing them up and down, when they're on the academy team, they can't focus on the LCS team problems. And when they're on the LCS team, then they worry about moving down to the academy team. So like you're on one of the teams, you're completely focused on this set of issues, and then they switch it around, and now you're on this other team. You have to focus on some other issues. True. Maybe that's contributing to some of the volatility.
I think it is, but when you talk about trades, I also think that we are more primed than ever to actually have action at the trade deadline. Other sports, a bunch of teams make moves, and with academy rosters, you have teams with overloaded assets in some positions and needs in other positions. And if you find the right combination, I think you're likely to see trades.
For example, Cloud9 have 2 very good supports in Zeyzal and Smoothie available.
And some teams are looking for a good support player.
Yeah, don't.
It's a question of what you give and what what C9 would need.
Exactly. It's like, and what does C9 need, right? They're a bit of a mess right now, but like, so it's a bit more established. I think it's a bit more established how good Zeyzal is now because he's played in LCS some more, right? Like, but even last split, people were talking about there being a lot of interest in Zeyzal, but there wasn't really like the right combination of what was being asked for versus what was kind of being offered and these sorts of things, because it does also come down to if you're Cloud9, if you don't think that your team is getting like a strict upgrade by giving up, say they decide, okay, we're going to start Zeyzal, that's our go-to guy, and you're going to give up Smoothie. Smoothie could really significantly improve a team, right? A lot of people, obviously, there's a kind of a target on Ole's back these days. It feels like a lot of people are saying, well, if Double just had a good support, Team Liquid would be godlike. They'd smash everyone, right? But are you willing to make that trade, right? Like,
I got a trade for you.
Okay.
All right. Your Team Liquid.
Yep.
I'm going to trade Smoothie for Xmithy.
No. Instantly no. Because
you're crazy.
Yeah.
You're saying Ole's a problem for Team Liquid. Smoothie's a former MVP candidate support, less than a split removed.
Yeah.
There's you have to go.
I'll give you Sven Skaren. Sven Skaren Ole.
Smithy
for Xmithy.
Too much.
Ole.
He's been too good internationally.
There's no way I make that trade.
He's one of the only guys who I feel like has been still like fairly consistent internationally. It's not like he's
but Sven Skaren, also former teammate of Doublelift, had a huge performance at 2016 World Championship.
Yeah, I mean
2016. What year is
Ole,
it right now?
Ole also, like, it wasn't long ago that he was considered one of the best supports, if not the best support in NA, right? So I just don't think that it's like. So while on paper right now you would think Smoothie might be an upgrade there because Ole hasn't been having the best time, and if like they're not working together well, even just as a duo, that might be an upgrade. I still think it would be a really hard sell, right? And then if you're not willing to do players, then it comes to, okay, well, maybe TL should just offer them money, but how much money do you need as C9 to be willing to upgrade an opponent's team when you're already on the verge of not making worlds, right? Like, that's maybe someone you need to be able to pass in the standings to have a shot at even making it into the gauntlet. So it becomes really tough, I think, with that, unless someone really has like a super compelling trade on both sides.
Yeah, because I also think it's interesting when I look at the way that NBA teams are traded. Like, there's a lot of trade for cash considerations, or even in the Major League Baseball, there's a lot of salary dumps. Like, are you a contender or are you looking to rebuild? And there are millions of dollars that are at stake here. Like, you're dumping this $20 million salary, so it's very meaningful. And now, where you have these actual sports teams owning these NA LCS teams that are looking for success, I don't think you're going to make a $200K salary dump if you decide that you're in a rebuild mode. Like, that's just not where their minds are at. So to find the right trade, you need to find a mutually beneficial trade. But we're also in a world where Ondo was just traded for Meteos. So there's a lot of stuff that could happen.
It'd be exciting.
And I took us way off topic with that. Is there any other stuff you want to talk about as far as NALCS matchups heading into the next week before we head on to Twitter questions? Because I'm excited about trades. I want them to happen. I just don't know if we're in that world yet.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there is potential. It'd be really exciting. And then there's also like, you know, the next step where we've had in the past, some team owners are just saying, okay, well, this is actually just in the best interest of the player. And it's not necessarily thinking just purely about our performance versus their performance. And I think that also can like up the likelihood of a trade if you're just saying, all right, Smoothie's a great guy, but we're not going to use him anymore. He's still really good. He'd do great on Liquid. Let's let him go, right?
I think C9 is asset rich. Yeah. They have a non-import mid laner who seems like he's competitive on the LCS stage in Golden Glue, and they have 2 non-import supports with shot calling ability.
Jensen's going to be non-import very soon.
C9 is rich with assets right now, even if they're below in the standings.
They have the #1 spot in the academy standings.
That's because they have so many assets, Kobe.
if that counts, because they offset their LCS standing.
Yeah, you just average them at the end of the year. Really, that's how it works.
All right, Twitter questions, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, fun hypothetical. If Snowball was introduced to Summoner's Rift, how, if at all, would it change pro play meta? From The Bull? And I mean, this is like...
How would it change it?
It deletes range champions.
Everyone's taking that sucker.
It becomes
not all range champions.
Busted.
Yeah, I mean...
I think you take Snowball over Flash as a jungler.
Snowball and Flash.
On many champions.
No. You take Smite to Snowball.
No.
You need
hear me
Smite,
out.
Okay, I'll hear you out. What do you got?
That's as far as I got.
I think on a lot of champions, you definitely would. Or it just makes the champions that don't need Flash that much better, right? And I play a lot of Aram. I love that mode. And to me, like the champions that get the biggest upgrades are champions that are balanced around being kited, right? Yeah. So it's like... Imagine Darius and Nasus and like those sorts of champions, of course, right? But it's like marksmen get taking Snowball and marksman is almost never good, right? So marksmen are just deleted from the game if this actually goes in. People complain about marksman now. It would actually be impossible to play because you'd have a Darius and Nasus and like Alistar or whatever. They're snowballing on your face and you were just screwed. So I think it massively changes the balance as far as anyone who needs gap closers. Now you have the best one on the game in a short cooldown. It will be nutty.
Yep.
Yeah, Jeff Menzen asks, why do you think all NALCS teams have been choosing to ban Aatrox? Has no one bothered to learn how to play/counter it, or is it just that OP of a champion right now? So I'm actually this week going to be talking to some of the NA pros specifically about what exactly is making Aatrox more powerful. But currently my understanding is that his early game is so oppressive to play against, and then the way they've been able to utilize the ultimate in team fights for basically the 2 lives, literally every single team fight, is what's making it. And it is my understanding that teams actually in North America spent a lot of time trying to counter it early on in scrims. And that is actually one of the reasons that they let it through so often at Rift Rivals, is because they thought maybe they'd be able to counter it, and they just decided they can't.
It's actually not a very complicated champion. If you just play a couple games on it, the damage from your Q is very high, and the life that you get back from your E passive is huge. So you can take your trades. Even if it's not the best trade, you heal back up off the minion wave. Most of the time, you're going to win the trade anyway because you have so much damage in your Q, but you get so much life back off of the passive that makes him a huge lane bully. And then you can stack cooldown reduction early, or at least I rush as much as I can get for always having this ultimate up and available. And it's a huge window of time that you get in the team fight. Even if people are not optimally using their Qs in the team fight, or they're getting kited, or CC is being thrown around, you're absorbing these cooldowns. Plus, then when you get knocked down with your ultimate up, you have this revive timer where you're still creating space for the team, where they're trying to camp you when you get right back up. So he brings so much at all phases of the game. It's not just in the early game where he's powerful.
I do also want to bring up, though, that when you look at his solo queue win rate, it's very close to 50%. So it's not like he's the 65% free win champion for everyone. But specifically, pro players are so much better at maximizing around these advantages. So they know how to avoid getting all in so that they can abuse their sustain in the laning phase.
Even higher ELO, the win rate goes way up as well. So.
Yeah, he's 51.76, it says right now, in top lane. So,
right.
like,
And there's
Diamond
champions that are
Plus,
way above that in win rate currently.
Yeah,
But for pro play, specifically because there are these advantages that pro players are better using.
And I think one of the other biggest things to me is just wave clear. When you talk about lane priority, that's such a big thing in pro play. Like, who has the push that allows your jungler to invade, allows you to be proactive on the map. No one can contest the push because his Qs are like the whole minion wave, right? So if you're going in there trying to contest that, you're just actually taking really bad trades. So you essentially just have to allow him to push in, then farm under your turret, which gives their jungle more priority too.
In addition, he has great gank setup with the chain, as well as one of the Qs. If you are going to do one of your combo videos on Aatrox, I can give them to you.
I mean, I'll take your
You
tips.
press Q and then you press E.
I'll take Lorlo's tips.
No.
Tips.
You EQ. Noob.
See, that's why I don't talk to Azale about
Kidding.
top lane.
It's not.
It's actually the same.
It's W, then QE.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, we will explain it with
you then.
visual
Makes no
aid
difference.
later. Final Twitter question of this episode. Twice I Slasher. Thoughts on the direction taken of the base HP buffs to Twitch and Jinx? Do you like this method of buffing marksmen? Also, out of all marksmen, why do you think these two arguably best scaling crit ADCs got the buff over Caitlyn or Trist or Ashe?
Caitlyn got it too.
Caitlyn did get a buff already. Ashe is actually one of the playable ones. Trist, I don't necessarily have the answer for, but we talked about in the patch section that it's an interesting buff. I want to see how it plays out because it's allowing them a little bit more breathability in the laning phase where they're normally getting starved out. Because even, I know we talk about win rates a lot this episode, but the win rates of these champs, even before the HP buffs, is actually okay. Like they're around 50% already.
They're
not talking about
51
Trist.
for Twitch and Jinx already. They were already two of the better performing marksmen as far as win rates do go, and those are not everything, especially for pro play, as we always go over. But Caitlyn didn't get the HP buffs.
She just got different.
No, she got buffed.
Yeah.
I was just saying she got buffed.
Yeah, do you have any additional thoughts? Like, just do you like the direction of those changes?
I mean, I think it's fine. We talked about it kind of in the patch as well. I mean, it's not like a super inspiring, but usually like stuff base stat changes are one of the most effective things for actually like increasing win rate, whether it's like HP regen, flat HP. It's a simple way to change a champion that doesn't disrupt how the champion feels to play. So I think as far as actual effectiveness versus disruption, it's one of the most effective things you can do.
Yeah.
Sweet.
And as you said, it's targeted at being all in by mages, by melee lanes. So.
Aatrox and stuff. Gotta remember that is... Oh, sorry. That's it for this episode of The Dive. I am going to remind people, though, about the Rift Rivals bet. We are filming it right after this and releasing it at a later date. So you can miss it if you want to, because it's mainly a promo for Euphoria.
No, what? Anything that I do, any work that I put out is going to be good, even if we have to do it to benefit
others.
We're doing it for a bad cause.
We're going to do it we're doing it for Deficio and Dracos and, the Euphoria.
Anyway.
But it is going to be a very well done advertisement.
It will. Tweet us, use the hashtag TheDiveLol, tweet RightChat, RightCobra, RightAzale. Find us on Instagram, send us messages there. We'll do our best to answer questions about the show. Remember, NA LCS kicks off with NA LCS Countdown, 1:30 p.m. Pacific time on Saturday. And we got Echo Fox vs. 100 Thieves right off the bat. See you then.